Why 15 January is the best day of my life. I speak to the quiet because it listens. I have learned that silence has a sound, and it sounds like me when no one is watching. In the morning, when the room still smells of sleep and unfinished thoughts, I lie there pretending I am not awake, because being awake means remembering. The ceiling above me has memorized my face better than any human ever has. It knows the exact moment my eyes blur, not from tears, but from exhaustion. There is a kind of tiredness that sleep does not touch. I carry it in my chest like a second heart, beating slower, heavier, asking questions my real heart refuses to answer. I used to believe pain needed an audience to be real. Now I know pain prefers privacy. It grows best in places where no one interrupts it with advice or hope. People say you're strong. They say it casually, like a compliment they found lying around. What they don't understand is that strength was never my choice. It was a sentence, a lifelong punishment for being the one who didn't collapse when everyone else did. I remember being young and believing that honesty would save me. I spoke too much then. I told the truth even when silence would have been safer. I thought words were bridges. I didn't know they could also be knives, especially when placed in the wrong hands. Somewhere along the way, I learned to swallow sentences whole. They still move inside me sometimes, unfinished, sharp-edged, demanding release. I am made of things I never said. There is a version of me that exists only in my head, the one who speaks clearly, who doesn't rehearse conversations in advance, who doesn't rewrite past moments trying to make them kinder. That version of me is fearless. I envy them. I mourn them. I don't know when we stopped being the same person. At night, my thoughts line up like confessions, waiting for a priest who never arrives. I replay old moments with forensic detail, the tone of a voice, the pause before a goodbye, the look that should have meant love but didn't. Memory is cruel, like that it edits nothing, softens nothing. It hands you the truth exactly as it happened and asks you to live with it again. Sometimes I wonder if I am lonely because I am difficult, or difficult because I am lonely. The question loops endlessly, like a song stuck between verses. I have loved people who never learned my language. I spoke in patience, in loyalty, in showing up. They spoke in absence, in excuses, in half-finished promises. We called it misunderstanding, but deep down, I knew it was neglect wearing polite clothes. I don't hate them. Hate requires energy, and I have learned to conserve mine. What I feel is quieter than hate, something closer to disappointment that has accepted its permanence. There is a grief that doesn't come from loss, but from realization, from understanding that some doors were never meant to open, no matter how gently you knocked. That some people only meet you halfway because they never planned to go further. I carry conversations that never happened, apologies that never came, closures that remained theoretical. The world moves on, but these moments stay seated inside me, refusing to stand up. When people ask how I am, I answer automatically, fine. It is the most efficient lie I know. It requires no follow-up, no concern, no responsibility. Fine is a locked room with soft lighting, but if I were honest, truly honest, I would say this. I am surviving myself. I am learning how to live with a mind that does not rest, with emotions that arrive without invitation and overstay their welcome. I am learning that healing is not linear, not clean, not Instagram friendly. Healing is ugly repetition. It is forgiving yourself for the same wound over and over. Some days I feel like a ghost, haunting my own life, present but not fully participating, smiling at the right moments, nodding at the right cues, while internally negotiating with memories that refuse to fade. I miss people who are still alive. That is a strange kind of grief no one teaches you how to process. I miss who I was before disappointment taught me caution, before trust became a calculated risk, before hope started feeling irresponsible, and yet despite everything I am still here. That fact surprises me more than it should. There is something quietly rebellious about continuing, about waking up and choosing not to disappear even when the idea feels tempting in its simplicity. I don't stay because life is easy. I stay because somewhere deep inside me there is a stubborn belief that my story is not finished speaking. I write because talking feels dangerous. On paper, I can bleed without being interrupted. I can admit things without being misunderstood. Words don't flinch when I tell them the truth. If this sounds like confession, it's because it is. Not to be forgiven, but to be real. I don't want to be admired for my endurance. I want rest. I want to stop proving that I can handle everything. I want a softness that doesn't feel temporary. Maybe one day I will read this and feel distant from it. Maybe this pain will become a chapter instead of the whole book. Until then, I write myself forward, sentence by sentence, breath by breath. I am not healed. I am honest. And for now, that is enough. Where I learned to become quiet. Before I learned how to explain myself, I learned how to disappear. Childhood, for me, was not loud trauma or dramatic collapse. It was quieter than that. It was the steady education of restraint. The understanding that certain questions were inconvenient, that certain emotions took up too much space. I learned early which parts of myself were welcome and which should be folded neatly away, like clothes meant only for special occasions that never came. I was a watchful child. I observed more than I participated. While others spoke freely, I measured my words, counting consequences before sounds ever left my mouth. I learned that being good often meant being silent. That obedience was praised more than curiosity. That love, when conditional, teaches you to perform rather than to exist. I don't remember the exact moment I became careful, but I remember the feeling like standing on thin ice and realizing it could crack at any time. From then on, every step mattered. Adults said I was mature for my age. What they meant was I caused no trouble. I didn't demand answers. I didn't insist on being seen. Maturity, I learned, was often just unexpressed fear wearing responsible clothing. I carried expectations that were never spoken but always present. Be grateful, be respectful, don't complain, don't question, don't feel too deeply, don't want too much. It was a long list, memorized without ever being written down. I followed it because the cost of disobedience felt heavier than the weight of obedience. There were moments I wanted to cry, but didn't know where to place the sound. So I swallowed it. Over time, swallowing became a skill. People complimented my patience. They didn't see the emotional indigestion it caused. I grew up believing that love was something you earned by being useful, by being agreeable, by not becoming a problem. I didn't know love could be gentle without being transactional. I didn't know it could stay, even when you failed. When I made mistakes, I didn't ask for forgiveness, I asked for erasure. I wanted the moment undone, forgotten, rewritten. Shame taught me that existing incorrectly was worse than not existing at all. There are memories I still carry like loose glass in my pockets. Small moments, seemingly insignificant, but sharp enough to draw blood when touched. A laugh that went quiet too quickly. A comparison I wasn't meant to hear. A look that said, "You should know better." I learned that disappointment could be communicated without words. I became excellent at reading rooms, at adjusting my volume, my expression, my needs. I could sense when to speak and when to fade into the background. This skill served me well socially, but it fractured something inside me. I stopped knowing what I wanted outside of what was acceptable. At some point, I mistook invisibility for safety. I watched other children express anger, sadness, joy without apology. I envied them in silence. They seemed allowed to be whole. I felt like a collection of edited versions, each one designed for a different audience. No one taught me how to name my feelings. They taught me how to manage them. There is a difference. Management focuses on control. Understanding requires permission. As I grew older, that unspoken discipline followed me. Even when no one was watching, I watched myself. I corrected myself mid-thought. I minimized my reactions. I questioned my right to feel hurt. I became my own strictest authority. There was no villain in this story. That is the hardest part. No single person to blame. Just a system of expectations, generational habits, emotional illiteracy passed down like heirlooms no one remembers choosing. I understand now that my parents were doing their best with what they had. That realization doesn't erase the impact. Understanding explains, but it does not undo. I still struggle with guilt when I prioritize myself. Rest feels undeserved. Joy feels temporary, like something I borrowed and must return soon. When good things happen, I wait for the balance to correct itself. I am learning slowly that I don't have to justify my existence through productivity or compliance. That I don't need to earn the right to take up space. These ideas feel radical, almost dangerous, as if believing them might invite punishment. Sometimes I speak to my younger self in my head. I tell them things no one told me then. You are not difficult. You are not ungrateful. You are allowed to ask. You are allowed to feel. I don't know if they hear me, but I keep speaking anyway. The quiet I learned as a child never left me. It evolved. It became politeness. It became emotional intelligence.